Prepare for battle! Foemen, to the wall! Defend the wall! Return to your posts! Send these foul beasts into the abyss!
Faith. Hope. Of all the words I've grown to know throughout my life, these two have become more dear to me than any other. They're two words that mean a lot to me, and I feel like a lot of you watching this can understand that. I can't determine or depict what will happen in this world. To me, my family, or my friends. What I can do, however, is hope and believe that in this crazy world where anything and everything can and does go wrong, good and happiness will also counter this chaos. Now, this idea of good versus evil is nothing new when it comes to storytelling. I mean, it's the basis of most stories throughout history, but even with that being the case, I believe that few stories portray the power of faith and hope against all odds as sincerely as Lord of the Rings. In this series, the future is bleak. The allies of good few, and the prospects of good prevailing over evil even fewer. But it is within these darkest of days that Lord of the Rings is able to deliver an important message. That being that while many would lead you to believe that it is only great power that can hold evil in check, some have found that perhaps placing your hope and faith in the small, everyday deeds of ordinary people can instead help keep the darkness at bay. And there's one character in Lord of the Rings that understands and helps to deliver this message perfectly. An angelic being sent from the very gods of Arda and Middle-earth itself to combat the devils of this world. He goes by many names. Olorin to the elves, Mithrandir to men. But for us, we know him as Gandalf. Today on Lore Tour, we're covering one of the most important characters J.R.R. Tolkien ever created, and one of my favorite characters of all time. On the 3rd of January, 1892, a child would be born that would go on to change the world of fantasy and literature forever. His name was John Ronald Raoul Tolkien, but most of us know him as the beloved J.R.R. Tolkien. As a child, the young Tolkien would explore the hills, mills, bogs, and other landscapes of Worcestershire, England, as well as the surrounding towns and villages. These early adventures would go on to inspire many scenes and settings we would come to know in Middle-earth, but he would come to be inspired by many other things as well. Taught at home along with his brother, his mother would go on to instill in him the love of botany, of plants, and of things that grow, and the young boy would even go on to enjoy drawing pictures of landscapes and trees. But perhaps most important, he would develop an innate love and talent for languages, even learning the rudiments of Latin at a very early age. These early passions would not wane as he grew older either. Considered quite the pupil by his family at an early age, this studious nature would serve him well in his education, where he would find a particular interest in constructed languages, even cooperating with some of his family and friends to make their own languages. And I just want to take a second here to say that all of these things, as well as things I'm about to mention very soon, they're all extremely important aspects when discussing Tolkien, because we would see these passions and life experiences of his woven into the very DNA of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. They are, in many ways, what define the renowned series he would go on to create. Regardless of the bright future ahead of him, however, not even the bright mind of Tolkien would be spared from one of the most horrific wars to ever take place. During his college years, the ever-growing embers of the First World War would finally ignite, engulfing the world into one of the deadliest conflicts to ever scar our planet. Our beloved author will be thrown into this conflict and its horrors as well, with him even serving in one of the worst theaters of the war, the Battle of the Somme. Tolkien would lose some of his dearest friends in this horrible war, and it was most likely during this time that his blatant hatred of an industrialized age truly began to form. Having seen firsthand the horrors and destruction that came from a mass-produced industry of war, having grown up on and around farms, nature, and beautiful landscapes in the rural countryside of England, he would take particular disgust in the utter destruction of these things he held so sacred and dear in his heart, by the fire and machines of a post-industrial age. This disgust would become so very evident in his later works, with his villains Morgoth, Sauron, Saruman, and the orcs that served them using the destructive power of industry to further their goals, with no regard to the consequences of it. Despite its horrors, he would survive the First Great World War, however. And while back home, it was at this time that the very first seeds of Lord of the Rings would be sown. All of the things we've briefly covered up to this point. His childhood memories, his passions and hobbies, the horrors of war that he experienced firsthand, all of these experiences throughout his eventful life would all now begin to culminate into the creation of one of the most influential and legendary pieces of literature seen in all of history. But this series would be incredibly complex, with a seemingly infinite amount of history and lore. So he would create one character in particular, a Grey Pilgrim, a wanderer, that would help introduce us to the wonders of this new world.
Didn't think it would end this way.
End? No, the journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path. One that we all must take. The grey rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass. And then you see it.
What? Gandalf? See what?
White shores. And beyond. A far green country and a swift sunrise.
Well, that isn't so bad.
No, it isn't.
Why do we love him though? Lord of the Rings suffers no shortage of amazing, complex, and just cool characters. Like many others that grew up with the movies as a kid, I thought Legolas pulling off crazy stunts was the coolest thing ever, and Gimli never failed to make me laugh. As I got older though, having read the books and enjoying the movies even more in my older age, Aragorn became more of my favorite character, finding more appreciation in the weight of his story as a mysterious ranger meant to be king. And as time goes on, I continue to find myself loving and appreciating every individual member of the Fellowship in their own regard more and more. But of all the members, as time goes on, I found myself almost appreciating Gandalf as a character the most. He is arguably the most important figure in all of Tolkien's work, being a Maiar, an angelic being sent by the gods of Arda to help guide the fate of Middle-earth and the evils that ail it. He is undoubtedly one of the most powerful beings in the setting. He also has great wisdom and foresight, having a vast knowledge and understanding of the world and its inhabitants that surround him. But even with his great powers, his many years on Middle-earth, and the wisdom that comes with that, one of my favorite things about him is that I find him to be one of the most human characters in the series. He's powerful and brave, yes, but even with these powers few could ever hope to best in the story, he also feels fear. Chosen by the Valar to become one of the Istari, a group of wizards sent to help guide Middle-earth in resisting and opposing Sauron, Gandalf was initially reluctant to do so. He was reluctant because he feared the great power Sauron wielded, and feared his mastery of manipulation. To him, opposing Sauron seemed to be an impossible task, but it was this fear, This reluctance, this humility that made him one of the most dangerous figures to Sauron. It gave him an understanding and relatability to the free peoples of Middle-earth that would in turn make him the ideal person to eventually lead the resistance against Sauron. He's also confident in his wisdom and knowledge, but he also feels doubt. Having been present in Middle-earth 2,000 years before the events of Lord of the Rings, he has come to know, experience, and understand many things within this world. This has given him an understanding of men, elves, dwarves, hobbits, etc. And make no mistake, he can be quick to anger when there's stubbornness and faults, but more than understanding these races and the world that they live in, he has come to respect them, respecting their strengths, differences, and said faults, further cementing in him the importance of his mission to stop the one that would have all these people and their unique traits either bound to his will or wiped out entirely. See, Gandalf is godlike, but has his own doubts in himself that allows him to relate with, as well as put his faith in, these races. Unlike the proud figures of Saruman and Sauron, who would only ever consider these people beneath them. I go back to the message that I said Lord of the Rings is telling in its story, and how I think Gandalf embodies it perfectly. Oftentimes, those who seem the most unlikely can do the greatest things. Gandalf was scared. He felt like he wasn't good enough to lead and felt he did not have much to offer, but others always saw the potential in him. And just as others would see the potential in him he did not see himself, Gandalf would go on to do the same by entrusting those others might not believe in, such as Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, an act that certainly saved the world of Middle-earth. It's such a compelling form of storytelling, and it's made even more compelling with his foil, Saruman. The Astari, the group of wizards that I mentioned earlier, were led by Saruman. Considered the most powerful, and to a select few, the wisest Astari, he would later see might as the only way to combat the growing threat of Sauron, eventually being corrupted by this ideology, wanting to obtain the One Ring for himself to challenge the Dark Lord and later usurp him. But with this ideology, he could never truly unite the races of men, elves, and dwarves, as his loyalty was always to himself, not the free peoples of Middle-earth, the complete opposite of Gandalf's. Gandalf has seen and experienced so much. He has knowledge and wisdom that few can still rival in Middle-earth, and he possesses powers that strike the races of this setting with awe. But despite all of this, he is quick to humbly trust those who others may doubt or not see the potential in. He is then what Sauron fears most, someone who will never succumb to his greatest weapons, those of deceit, doubt, temptation, corruption, the feeling of hopelessness. But not only that, because of this, he is able to inspire those around him to reject these evils as well, by hoping and believing in others, even with their faults and shortcomings that he too is familiar with and understands. He is able to unite the factions of good against evil and set the course for Sauron's demise by simply believing in the most unlikely of heroes.
What words of comfort did you give the halfling before you sent him to his doom? The path that you have set him on can only lead to death.
I've heard enough. Shoot him. Stick an arrow in his gob.
No. Come down, Saruman, and your life will be spared. Save your pity and your mercy. I have no use for it. Saruman, your staff is broken.
However, that does not mean in any way that Gandalf is powerless. Far, far from it. As stated before, his abilities that we see in the series are ones that most mortals could rarely ever hope to rival. He's taken on and defeated Durin's Bane, one of the last Balrogs, powerful creatures of ancient evil. Formerly Maiar, just like Gandalf, these angelic beings were corrupted by the first Dark Lord, Morgoth, and served as lieutenants of his dark forces and armies in the times of the First Age. Gandalf fought one of these pillars of evil for 10 days straight, underneath and atop the Misty Mountains before slaying it. He would later succumb to his wounds following the battle, but would be revived as Gandalf the White, with his strength and abilities significantly increased. We also see that he was able to break Saruman's hold over Theoden, something not easily done, mind you, with Saruman being arguably the strongest wizard in Middle-earth before Gandalf's revival to Gandalf the White. And later we would even see him break Saruman's staff with but a word, and after that help purify Orthanc and Isengard after Saruman's corruption of it. We've seen him blind and help repel the Nazgul and other minions of the Dark Lord with his spiritual light. Also of note is that he wields Glamdring, a powerful and legendary elven blade. Also known as Foehammer or Orc Beater, many servants of Sauron would rightly fear and fall to its precision and deadliness, especially while wielded by Gandalf. And that's because the hand that guides this blade has experienced over 2,000 years on Middle-earth. And these 2,000 years would not be wasted away, lying low in the middle of nowhere or wasting away in a tavern, but in travel, adventure, combat, and in the search of knowledge, all of which would culminate in Gandalf becoming one of the most skilled people in all of Middle-earth. But even with all these things considered, it's not just his physical or spiritual might that makes Gandalf so powerful. He also has many deep, long-standing connections with the people and beasts of Middle-earth. Men, elves, dwarves, hobbits, and even ancient creatures such as the Ents, the eagles, and even his own steed, Shadowfax, the Lord of Horses. They all treat Gandalf with an unusual respect, and for good reason. He was sent to this world to help guide and unite these races, and it's a role that he would excel in unlike any other Astari from his order. Like I just touched on previously, for thousands of years Gandalf has wandered Middle-earth, building deep ties with the leaders, peoples, and cultures of its inhabitants. And also, as I've touched on, near the end of the Third Age, as the War of the Ring began, these long-standing connections and ties to the free peoples of Middle-earth would prove absolutely invaluable in uniting them all against Sauron. Gandalf is more than able to hold his own in a fight. He's able to use his spiritual abilities to turn the tides of battle as well as break the hold of more evil forms of magic, and he's wisely used his time on Middle-earth to gain connections and guide its people in case of the return of Sauron. We can admire his relatability, such as I covered in the last section for sure, but his martial, spiritual, and political skills absolutely demand respect as well.
The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many.
I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you also were meant to have it. And that is an encouraging thought.
But while he certainly advances the story by these more traditional means, another thing he's so important for is giving context, providing lore, and fleshing out the world the reader is reading about. The lore and setting of Middle-earth is vast, deep, and endlessly complex, and to help traverse this, Gandalf is often used as an important guide, historian, or counsel to the characters he's talking to, and by extension, the reader. Tolkien is no stranger to setting the scene and providing context for his readers. I mean, just look back at Concerning Hobbits. Before we even start the story of the first Lord of the Rings book, The Fellowship of the Ring, we are given a lengthy prologue that delves into the lifestyles, personalities, and even history and lineages of the hobbits and the Shire, all before we even meet Frodo or Bilbo and start the story. I bring this up because the scale of this singular fantasy universe can almost be intimidating and daunting for people picking it up for the first time. But The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings handle what could be a potential problem for some in such an engaging, naturally progressing way. And it's often done by exposition provided by characters like Gandalf. And with many of these lore drops he gives us being so well written and engaging, it really hooks you, making you want to learn more and more about this fascinating world you've set foot in. Other times, some of this information he shares with us foreshadows events to later be revealed, again hooking the reader and later rewarding them if they stick around. But most importantly, as stated before, it's often done in such a natural way by Gandalf, with him explaining these things to you in the moment of the scenes he and the characters are in, often in direct reaction to whatever they are witnessing in that moment of the story. This doesn't take the reader out of the story, it immerses them in it completely. For example, when it is revealed that Gollum had been tracking the Fellowship, Gandalf and Frodo have a moment where the Grey Wizard explains to the Hobbit just who this mysterious figure stalking them is. He gives us and Frodo a small detailed history and account of him, his previous role in The Hobbit, and hints at a significant role he may yet play. He also uses this moment to give Frodo an important lesson of mercy, and not being quick to deal out the judgment of death. It's a small scene in the grander scheme of things, but it's in moments like these where the utility of Gandalf shines. He explains what this creature is that, as stated, will end up having a major role to play in the future, foreshadowing events and engaging the curiosity of the reader. His retelling of previous events with Gollum gives important context for first-time readers, as well as rewards readers that had finished The Hobbit. And finally, in giving Frodo an important lesson in mercy, he sets the stage for the very destruction of the ring itself. It was Bilbo and Frodo's pity of the tragic creature Gollum that kept both of them from killing him. And, in other examples, while still exploring the mines of Moria, he explains to the Fellowship that there are older, fouler things in this world than orcs, making the audience lean in out of curiosity, as we realize that something big might be coming, foreshadowing the eventual reveal of the Balrog, and making the payoff of that reveal far more significant. Also, in The Hobbit, when Gandalf is forced to leave Bilbo, Thorin, and the company of dwarves at the foot of Mirkwood, he warns them of this dark and perilous forest that has been under the influence of dark forces for some time, stressing to them that they should in no circumstance stray from the main enchanted elven pathway that leads through these murky woods, heightening the stakes once again, foreshadowing the events to follow when the company inevitably strays from the path and we see the consequences of it. Consequences that we may be taken aback by still, but have already been warned of, so as to not be left entirely confused. You see, Gandalf doesn't narrate everything, he reacts, waiting to explain during a quiet moment, or a turning point in a moment of action or danger. He's one of the greatest lore delivery machines in fiction, because he never infodumps. He teaches, warns, and foreshadows all at once, and he does it in a way that feels natural to the moment. And for a series whose lore seems almost endless and incredibly complex, I just find that so amazing. The fact that he's able to provide so much to the reader in these scenes is, well, such an incredible resource for the story. And it just goes to show the absolute mastery of Tolkien when it comes to storytelling, and why his works remain timeless to this day. I adore Lord of the Rings. I love the books, I love the movies, and I love the overall lore more than anything. But more importantly, I love the incredible characters found within this beloved setting. Many of their arcs carry a certain message, each of which could speak to certain people in certain moments of their life, whether that be learning to break down walls, facing a destiny seemingly thrown upon you, choosing to accept and carry a burden for others, or allowing yourself to have faith and hope in things others might tell you is just a waste of time. And because of this, Lord of the Rings and its characters like Gandalf have always and will always continue to stand the test of time. He himself has remained relevant for almost a century, and his staying power comes from the way that he blends magic with humanity, like with his guidance to characters like Frodo and Bilbo, highlighting themes of friendship, perseverance, and the burden of choice. Qualities that resonate across generations. These emotional layers make him more than just a wizard. He becomes a moral anchor whose insights and wisdom feel relevant well beyond Middle-earth, and to the very lives and experiences we live. Gandalf also endures in modern media because he embodies a rare blend of emotional resonance and cultural adaptability. His legacy rests on how he has personally helped shape fantasy storytelling, how audiences have connected with his wisdom, and how successive adaptations have kept refining his image while preserving his core identity. He's become one of my favorite characters of all time, and one who I find adds so much to any scene he's in. Whether it's in combat, giving guidance or wisdom, or explaining the lore and history of the land to us. And because of all these things, much like in his own world of Middle-earth, Gandalf has become timeless in our world as well. You know, it's funny. Tolkien originally sought to make England's very own mythology with his works, but in the end, he ended up creating something so much more impactful. He created the greatest series of all time, and with that, Middle-earth and its incredible characters like Gandalf have not become something that simply one country loves and celebrates, but something the entire world does collectively, and I just think that's awesome.
Hello! Do you enjoy stories, characters, and feeling things? Of course you do! What do? Stare at a wall all day? Well, you've come to the right place. I hope.
Here on Lore Tour, we analyze characters, factions, battles, and settings from series such as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Halo, no, not that Halo, anime, and more. I'm a fan of all these things and plan to keep making videos covering them, and I also love talking about them with other fans. So, if this is something that sounds interesting to you, I would love nothing more than to create a community where we can all do just that. And maybe I can make something interesting enough for you to watch to start that conversation.
So hey, if you enjoyed the video, think about subscribing to the channel. Leave it a like and also leave a comment, and let's get that conversation going. Hey, until the next video, thanks for your time. Have a great day.